Okay. Welcome everyone to this session 4 of PICA Thesis Forum. We're very happy that this series is going on and we are able to present to you very good thesis. Every Thursday we typically have this session at 5 o'clock, but this week we've had very heavy rains and a lot of people had power cut issues. So yesterday's session was postponed for today. And so today's session will be moderated by Professor Smita Dalvi. Um, she needs no introduction, but I will ask her to take over from here and go ahead conduct this session. Welcome, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Kavita. And this is really wonderful to be here, back here in PICA Thesis Forum. It is going really strong, and we must all commend all the efforts of all the faculty members and the student volunteers who have made this possible. It is a self-evident truth, that all the students, all of us learn as much from our peers as we learn from our teachers, if not more, And informally, during college, that always happens, interaction among different batches, and everybody, all the students learn from their fellow students. In the current times when that is not possible, then this is the best possible option. And it is really nice to see it being formalized in this way, in which really some truly wonderful insights have been shared by our past students who have graduated in last, I think, couple of years or 3 or 4 years at the most. So for them also, the memory of their thesis is very fresh, and it is really nice for all of us collectively to see their work, the final work being presented in this manner. So it's wonderful to have our recent alumni back with us, sharing their experiences for essentially for the learning of all the current students, as well as for the faculty members. So today's guest speakers, so to say, yes, they are guest speakers because now they're alumni, and we are very happy that they have received, that they have accepted our invitations. So today's speakers for the PICA Thesis Forum are Riddhi Ayya and Isha Harmalkar. It is really my pleasure to introduce both of them. Let me begin by introducing Isha. Isha graduated from PICA in the year 2019, and after having worked with a couple of prestigious firms, she is now in the process of setting up her own practice and currently working on her individual projects. At the same time, she is also preparing for applying for postgraduate studies, which will probably happen in the next academic year. And to introduce Riddhi, Riddhi graduated a year before, in the year 2018. She's currently working with a firm named Fusion Studio in Mumbai. And at the same time, she has also started her own venture along with a few collaborators, and her venture is named Troy Architects and Designers. While being a student, Riddhi has won several scholarships and participated in many competitions, uh, 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 various competitions in different years of, right from first years, she has been doing that. She is also a talented canvas artist and has put up her art at the prestigious exhibition like P.L. Deshpande Art Gallery in Mumbai. So that is really interesting. And in her own words, she firmly believes that consistency is the key to everything. So, so yes, we are very happy to have both of you, Isha and Riddhi, with us to share your thesis experience with us. So let me invite Isha to begin her presentation, and then we will have Riddhi.
Thank you, ma'am, for the intro. I'll just start with it. Hi. Firstly, I would really thank Dalvi ma'am. She was my moderator for thesis as well, and without her, I don't think I would have had this topic, to be honest. So my topic is a working women's hostel, and it's situated in Worli. Um, so the main idea of a hostel or anything was to create stories. So if you understand by this that whenever you are in a campus, wherever you're living in a campus life, or you're in college, most of the times you start your understanding of spaces, and what happens is after you've passed out or after you've done something, you start telling stories about things, and the first thing that you say is that, Ari, do you remember we used to go to the canteen, used to bunk lectures, go to the canteen, or there was this courtyard where I used to sit. So basically these stories are what I wanted to create through spaces, and that's how my thesis has started. So the main question is, what's a hostel and what's the need of an hostel? So now let's come to what's in hostel. So there are these four important questions that I have asked: is what is a hostel? What makes hostel different from other accommodation? Then we talk about hostels in India and why working women's hostel is the topic that I have taken. Okay. So what is a hostel? So in hostel, if we ask you what is a hostel, everybody will be like, okay, we relate it to freedom. Like it's something where you leave your own house and then you come and settle in a place, either for studies or working or XYZ reason. So basically it's your second home. And in a hostel, you have people from various regions of the country. So basically it's a diverse ecosystem that has been created, and which creates a cycle of activities and functions. Okay. And in this, as it is a second home, you get attached to it. So you have a sense of attachment towards it. So then the second question is, what makes it different from the other living accommodation areas, like PGs or rented apartments, is that if you see PGs and rented apartments, PGs are something where you have a basic canteen and you have your room, and then in rented apartment basically the entire place is yours. But in hostel, what happens is you have different social recreational spaces plus your private own space. Basically in a hostel you can call the entire campus as your own. So that is the difference between, so that is why a hostel and not any other accommodation services. The third question that we ask is, what are the hostels in India? Like hostels in India ka definition, what is the definition of that? So when we look at it today, you see that most of the hostels have a small courtyard in the between, you have corridors on its periphery, and then you have rooms allocated. And the basic provision, that is accommodation plus sanitization, is actually what the idea of an hostel is in India till date, which is contradictory to the idea of what an actual hostel is. A hostel where you have different kinds of spaces, different recreational spaces, different social spaces where people gather together, talk to each other. So India, for right now, the idea is very rigid, and then we go to the fourth question, is why a working women's hostel? So if you see the different kinds of accommodations platforms that are available today, like student hostels, other rented apartments, or else even if you say that you have other services like co-living spaces and all of that, you'll see that there has been a gradual progress in the infrastructure of these accommodations. Like you see student hostels, there are many hostels which have understood the impact uh, s- of architecture and of how a space should be on the student or on the person residing in it, and they have started taking measures on making it making it more lively, making it more interesting. But this progress is very stagnant when it comes to working women's hostel. So that is the reason the thesis is on working women's hostel. So to summarize this, so is that a basic idea of a good hostel is clean beds plus TV plus a toilet, and the change is the effort that is to change the idea of this established idea. So now that we know why what I wanted to do in thesis, so there are these other 10 or few questions that I have jotted down, which are the research questions on which basis my entire thesis has been lined up. So the research questions are important because you start getting a clear idea of what you want to do in your thesis and how you want to present it. So the few questions that are were talking about what is the current scenario of the working women's hostel in India, then where are these hostels needed the most, so that you understand where you need to situate your thesis. Then what is the nature of the organization and the management of a working women's hostel, so you understand the function of the entire hostel and start thinking on those lines. Then you start then you ask the question of what is the socio-economic background of a working woman of the working women who are admitted in the hostel, so that you understand what kind of how you have to treat this hostel. Then the other questions like what are the problems faced, other and annual financial outlay of the hostels or the source of income of the hostels, because hostel being a private entity, you are the only way of generating revenue is the rent that the women are paying. So understanding what kind of source of incomes you have, and playing and adding to these, what can you propose, and the impact of working women's hostel on a woman's life who is already staying there. Then we come to the architectural part of it. We talk about the vital role that the infrastructure plays in an inmate's life. Then how is architecture going to help in improving in the stay, and how architecture interventions can generate revenue for the hostel. So what happens is, working women's hostel is basically a government scheme that was introduced in 1972-73. So, and it was, the basic objective was to provide suitable and safe, inexpensive accommodation for working women. So with this, you get an idea that you can't spend a lot of money on working women's hostel, because first of all, it's a government project. Second of all the other hostels which are not government projects are basically CSR projects of big companies like Reliance, Tata, or Infosys, all of that. Now we come to the point of need. So now we have spoken about what is a hostel. Now we talk about what is the need of an hostel. So the major point here is migration. Now if you see the numbers, there are a lot of women who migrate for work and employment. And there has been a gradual decrease in the percentage, but the numbers are still increasing. And this makes you understand why we need hostel, more working women's hostel. And then there are these evaluation reports that have been made by NGOs and private institutions that have been uploaded online, and which talk about the entire which actually give you an understanding of the situation of a working women's hostel in our country. So now if you see in Maharashtra, there are a lot of number of hostels, and in these evaluation reports, you understand what is the intake capacity of an hostel and how it is distributed all along the country. So now when I was talking about migration and the number of hostels that are already available, you can see that these surveys have pointed out one thing that is known as overcrowding and underutilization. What is happening is the number of women that are coming in to stay in a hostel are increasing day by day, but with that, if you see, the infrastructure is still the same. There has been a stagnant stop on the growth of making new hostels or increasing the infrastructure of the current hostel. So that's where you see that a lot of places like Chennai, Bhopal, Mumbai, Hyderabad, these are the spaces where most of them are facing the situation of overcrowding and underutilization. Then there were few assessments done to understand what kind of infrastructure should be provided, what kind of facilities should be provided in a hostel. So we talk about what are the facilities that were there. So there were these graphs made on the certain elements that are there in the hostel, like study tables and rooms. Do you have a TV? Do you have Wi-Fi? Do you have a bed? Do you have enough storage? So after this evaluation, there was an interpretation done where they needed laundry rooms. This is what is missing in them. They needed dry areas where they can have places to keep their clothes and dry them off. Then they wanted kitchenettes, because in the current hostel there's only one cafeteria that has been provided, which has these time slots of like 8 to 9, 9 to 10, where you can come, eat and go, nothing else. And then when talking about infrastructure of the hostel, you understand that what kind of rooms that are there. So you have shared rooms, you have single rooms, and in this graph it points out on how a maximum number of rooms were shared rooms and single rooms were the very least rooms that were being provided. This basically gives an idea on the brief that we are going to design. Like, now if there are more shared rooms, so you give a higher percentage to the shared room and a lower percentage to a single bedroom. And in this next, then we talk about the other infrastructural facilities like handicap toilet, ramps, dormitory, and all of that. And in this the main thing that was pointed out was that these hostels have to be barrier free. They were not barrier free. And the other main thing that was spoken about was why do working women prefer to stay in a working women's hostel? So the three main points that were noted were proximity, security, and career persuasion. So what happens is a hostel should be placed somewhere, or if anybody, if even suppose, let's take an example of a student. A student goes to an hostel, goes to a college. His first thing is, okay, and if he or she is from some place else, or is coming after a long travel, they would search for hostels or living accommodations around. So the first thing is, like, they will be like, yeah, it should be near. So the proximity point comes into it. Now, this being a working women's hostel, security becomes a big point of consideration, because at the end of the day, everybody wants you to be secure. Your family wants you to be secure. So security comes into the question, and career persuasion. Like, people move for studies, people are moving for working. And this thing gives you an idea of how you should locate the location of your site. So to give a proper summary of this, basic understanding of what all things are needed. So study areas, cafe, kitchens, library, a laundry room, more storage, one sick room, and Wi-Fi and everything is the later part. And the other thing is the location. So our location has three things to be taken into consideration. The location should be in between business hubs, residential areas, and transportation. Business hubs because it is easily it's an easy approximation. Second, residential because if you're surrounded by a lot of residential area, you yourself get a feeling of comfort and safety. And transportation because it's easy to transport from your place to your working place. Now let's come to user study. So now it being a working women's hostel, the main criteria, the main user to study is a working woman. So there are different working women, like single women who are working, who are studying and working, who are married women with children, divorced women, widows, etc. Then the staff members, obviously, because the staff that will take care of the hostel, and the visitors. So in general, if you see, the visitors have not been given so much of focus in the working women's hostel that are there today. So when you go in more detailed study of this, I have done a study on the age group of the women and the marital status of the women. Age group, why do we do an age group study? So an age group study is to understand a maximum number of women in a certain age group, gives you an idea of what kind of spaces do you need to provide in your thesis. So like in my case here, the age of 18 to 35 is the maximum, which is basically a young group. So for a young group, if you see, their ideology is to go out after work and come back, have a small social space. So such kind of recreational spaces are something that I have to think about. And then the marital status of a woman was seen because what happened is married women with kids also have an entry in the working women's hostel. So providing a daycare center, and how if at all at night, how a room is for a woman and her child both. The percentage of this is very low, but still it has to be taken into consideration. Then a duration of their stays graph was made. So if you see that maximum women come for a very small time. So a small if you are going and staying in a hostel for a shorter period of time, they prefer to stay in shared rooms or dormitories because you have your social circle and then you can talk and chat, and it's much more cheaper than the single room. But if you see women who are wanting to stay for more than 3 or 4 years, like more than 2 years actually, they prefer to take single rooms because they need their own privacy, and the storage that they will be needing will be way more than what a temporary person might need. So duration of the stay gives you an idea about how many rooms should be provided for what purpose. And then there's a small um, graphic over what is the impact of the stay of an hostel. So the positive and the negative impact that we're talking about. And so the positive impact basically gives you makes you understand what is the freedom that you have. You have your sense of responsibility over you. You start you start with the self-actualization thing. And the negative impact is mainly because of the infrastructure that is there. So now to summarize this, so the age group gives you spatial requirements, as in social, recreational, work plus study, because there are a lot of women who study and work as well. And the duration, that is the longer, gives you more permanent, that is more private space, and the shorter, that gives you more temporary, like the dormitory space. Okay, so this is one graphic for that. Now, after why a hostel and what's the need of an hostel and the user study, we talk about the concern and the challenges that are there while thinking about a working women's hostel. So the concern is basically the thought, and the challenge again is the change. So in today's hostels, if you see, there are hundreds of rules, and these rules, they talk about, women cannot enter the hostel after 10:30 p.m. They need to maintain silence. They have these curfew. You have to have this decorum, and there is this lack of actual freedom, the understanding of freedom that women want when they leave their house, which is getting barred because of these rules. And there are like very less space, very cramped spaces, and the movement is very, very, very stagnant. So the concern and the thought is on why is this happening, so how can you change it, and what are the methods, or what are the interventions that you can provide. And the other concern is, when I was taking interviews. So this is one of the interviews that I've shown you. A number of interviews were taken, and from that interviews, there were a few things that had come up, that there is no personal space and there is no infrastructure quality. So when you when you like get out of it, and then you understand like what is needed. So and when you talk to them, they tell you that they need storage, they need better toilets, they need more social spaces, kitchenette for cooking small portions. So what happens here is, a lot of students, a lot of women that had interviewed were also students. So they were like that, we work, then we come home, then mostly we make our presentations at night, or we study at night, we do our homeworks at night. So at that time we would need a cup of coffee, or we would need a little Maggie or something like that. So they had no facility for that. So they had this one induction motor that on which they used to cook or do anything. But they said that if a small kitchen was provided, would help them, for which I have added that in this workspaces. Now every room had beds and a table beside that, or some of the hostels do not even have a table. So they say they cannot work at night because the lights are on, so other inmates get disturbed. So individual workspaces and study areas. Visitors lounge, because this question even Dalvi ma'am had raised, as that people who come to visit their family who are staying in hostels do not have any space for the visitor to stay in. So they have to go out of the hostel and stay in a hotel or something like that. So to provide a visitors lounge with some rooms where they can have they can stay, and as well as meet their friends. Then the main two things that were pointed out was the minimal maintenance and the lack of freedom. So how do we help in maintaining the entire place? Maintenance mostly is not happening because people do not have enough funds to provide the caretakers or the other staff that is going to take care of the entire building. So here you talk about how you need to generate revenue more and more for hostel. And the other is lack of freedom because you have the small cramped space, and then there are 110 rules that are there which has to be taken into consideration, and yet make a space where you can have both of the things living together. So the challenge is, again, as I said, change. So the left side of the image is basically live images of working women's hostel that are there in Mumbai and Navi Mumbai. So, and these are located in good posh areas of Mumbai, like Worli and South Bombay areas. And that is the condition. If you see, there are only these basic beds provided with minimal light, minimal storage at the end where you can see the cupboards. This is what the actual condition is. And towards the right side is an image that I have made out of the case studies that I've done over hostels. So basically the challenge is to change the left side image, the right side image. So now when we talk about change, we talk about how we bring a change with the help of architecture. Now that we've spoken about so many spaces and everything, we have understood that social spaces are not there, private spaces have not been designed in a decent manner. So my first study was on private, semi-private and public spaces. So first I have done case studies on small spaces, and then I have gone ahead. So this is one case study that was done by me. It's a bed one block hostel. It's a small 265 square meter hostel. You can see there's just the plans that are there to the left corner in the end. So in this, when you study the hostel, if you see the section, you have a red part in the lower section, and then you have one room on each floor. So what happens here is, if you see, when you enter the area, the pink staircase is basically a social space. Then you go into a mezzanine. The dining area is below it, and when you go in the room, you have a powder area where you have your sanitation and WC, and then you enter into the dormitory, and then you have your recreational area. This case study basically gives me an idea of how a spatial balance has been maintained. So not only the hostel has a social space, but every room here has a different social space. So what is happening here is, you have this proper bifurcation of, sanitization area, area where you sleep, that is the resting area with storage, and the other is the recreational area, again, which has a little storage as well as seating. So if you can see the image with the human, here is the recreational area that has been provided in every room. So this case study gives you a basic idea of the spatial balance. And then when you look at the right corner at the end, you see that the sanitization area has also been bifurcated into four, as there are four people living in the one room. So there's powder area, so one can visit the powder area anytime they want. They have WC, and then they have their bath area, so everything can be used individually. The other case study is based in Netherlands. This is of a much more greater scale, and in this, what I have.
Isha,
Hello.
Isha,
Yes.
yeah, I think you should also speed up a little.
Okay, ma'am. Sure. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So in this, you basically talk about how you can make different kind of social spaces, use the open terrace as well as the shifting of plates, allowing you different connections, and basically making a hostel a multifunctional hostel. The third and the other one was talking about the designing of rooms, on how you have this proper circulation, then you enter, you have wet area, all of that. And then the gray areas that have been circled are basically the areas that have been designed for storage. So, niches again become a part of your design. The other things were the spaces that contribute to the upliftment of the hostel are colors, workstations, and connections. So basically colors give you the character that a space needs. And then workstations, as there are a lot of women who need workstations or who need to work. So, why not provide a workstation altogether? And the other thing was, having connections that are designed. So basic connections had been designed, and then they were refurbished and made into connections that become social spaces. So this is a basic comparative analysis of it. And the inference taken out of it was, you need, what all spaces do you need? Workspaces, study areas, connection with social spaces, and colors that give the character to the space, incorporation of green. Now the research goes on architectural hostels. What happened in this, all the points that we had covered in spaces come together and form one entire building. And in this, we see how the spatial connections have been maintained, how there is a balance between social and private spaces, then how you play with courtyards, how you played with common shared terraces, shared balconies, and heights and everything. And this is one case study of that. The second case study here talks about orientation and how perspectives change. So orientation, so if you see the left side, you see that all the buildings, that it's a student housing, and all the buildings basically are, parallelly facing, and they have this problem. They have this, they face each other, and you can see what is happening in the other room. So on the opposite building, so the orientation was designed in such a way, and still they had these problems. So they bay windows were introduced, which were all facing north, And in this, you can see that colors were again used. Colors were used to indicate, like there were few buildings whose bay windows were given red color from the interior. So you understand that you live in the red block, you live in the green block. So colors basically give you a sense of direction as well. So this is the basic comparative analysis that was done through this. So the inference that are taken out of this was how social spaces can be given at turns, because that's where you have negative spaces. Then how you can use courtyard and common terraces, visual connections, many social spaces near the entrance, the main social library plus study area that should be provided, terraces acting as social spaces, color giving a character to the space. Now, a basic study was done on on two working women's hostel. I was not allowed inside the building, so it's like I said, there are a lot of rules, and one of the rules is that you cannot enter the building. So this is basically the diagrams that I've made are out of understanding from what interviews I've taken, and they have explained me what kind of planning is there inside. And you can see the condition of the hostels. It's really very sad. So you like hardly have any space. You don't even have space to clean, keep your room, dry your clothes and everything. So going ahead, after all of this study of architectural and spaces and everything, I had written an essay over how you should design different elements of the room. So till now, till this point, I had a basic idea of what all areas should be provided and what other things should I provide. And I had written about how I want these areas to be. Now, after that, even I had written an essay on what I think is an ideal hostel. So it's something that you should think about your own design. If you want to design that, how you want to design your entire thesis. So you can talk about it, which gives you a clear idea of what you want to do. Then comes the process of site selection. So from the user study, we had understood that where the site should be located. So with this, I had three basic ideas of site. One was in Mulund, Andheri, and the other one was in Worli. So the third option was chosen because the site where it's situated has a lot of things happening in the vicinity of 2 kilometers, which is related to working women's hostel. Now there are if you see the yellow ones, these are big 5-star hotels which have a lot of women coming in from different areas to work there. So again, the site becomes easy. Then you have India Bulls there. So India Bulls is again a very big commercial hub. Then you have the bus depot is right beside the site, the best bus depot. So you can see that it is the transport connection is also very quick, and it's exactly situated beside the Doordarshan building and near Kamla Mills. So it's very easy to locate. And this is the basic study that you do about uh, all the aspects that are there. And now I go ahead with design. In design, there were these few things that I had done was understood that the open to build ratio is varied. Like there are a lot of buildings and there is this one small green pocket. So introduction of green pocket was my response. Light and ventilation. So as this site is situated in Mumbai, in South Bombay, the FSI there is really high. So it was 4. And then you need to build high-rise buildings. So in high-rise buildings, if you're putting courtyards, you have light ventilation problems. That is why the heights of the buildings were different. And then I spoke about transition of spaces. Now Mumbai has a lot of heat and humidity. So how open to semi-open to closed space, the transition of that will actually give you pleasant air. And then incorporation of green at every floor. And while studying this site, I understood that there is this huge 3-meter footpath going around the site, and one side of the site had informal settlements over it. So what I did was I designed the compound wall in such a way that it has seating and green towards it. So it makes the it actually helps the context as well as it helps to attain the purpose of a compound wall for the street. Now, when it comes to planning, so after all of this, this research, I had understood that generation of revenue is very, very, very important for a working women's hostel, because without that the hostel cannot be maintained and all the design just goes to flop. So what I had done was I had provided a working women hostels, obviously, which is the main criteria, but with that a daycare center, a WeWork, a space for WeWork, a WeWork infrastructure building, and a public plaza was introduced. So this is the hostel, this is the daycare center, this is basically the public plaza with an open public plaza here, and above this public plaza was a working woman was a WeWork area that was provided. So WeWork, daycare and public plaza, the public plaza with ATMs and a general store area actually help you get rent, which can help maintaining your hostel. So this is something I had thought about. Then the other thing when it comes to hostel was introduction of green pockets. So if you see, the entire site has 3 courtyards and other semi courtyards surrounding the building, which allows all the rooms to look out to the courtyard, and it becomes social. They become different open social spaces. On the ground floor, I had 3 entries, 3 different entries, and 3 different entries because the building was on a large area. So all these entries, basically they enter into a courtyard. Then you have these social spaces around, and then on the upper floors is where your private spaces start. So all of this, all of the ground floor is basically a social area. The on the if you see in the northern area, there was a visitors lounge provided, which had a visitors lounge as well as rooms for visitors who can come and stay, who are coming from far away, and even friends of the women who can come and sit and enjoy. And you have a mess here and everything ahead. So now when you go ahead, if you see that the building, the height of the building has been played with, it goes up, and then all of that. And this, in this, what happens is, if you see ahead, the points that have been incorporated from the research are balance of social and private, the kitchenettes and laundries providing at every floor, you have social places, you have courtyards, you have connections to which act as social spaces. So basically the corridors, they act as social spaces, and colors that indicate few spaces. So if you see in the plan, this is the first floor plan, and where you have rooms. So all the rooms, if you see, look out to the green spaces, and if you see the corners where there are purple circles, these are basically the breakout spaces. And on every floor, a laundry room with drying area was provided, and a kitchenette, a small kitchenette was provided with a social space at the end. And there was one more thing that was provided, was in the kitchen. For the kitchen, there was a capacity of 300. So what I had done was, on the roof of the kitchen, I had provided a roof farm. What happens in this is that basically you grow your own vegetables, you use them. And then in this, the maintenance, now you see that there are social spaces in the corridor. So the corridor acts as a social space, and then you have your rooms. Then in the rooms also, if you see, and these are the basic views of the first one is the entrance. There's a pedestrian pathway, which is pergola. Then the other is the breakout spaces that have been provided on each floor. The next one is the balcony space that is there. Now, if you see, 3 kinds of rooms were provided. One was a single bedroom, the other one was 2 sharing, and the third type was 6 bedrooms. In this, what you can see is that every bedroom had 4 criteria: sleeping area, studying area, storage area, and sanitization spaces. So sanitization space is basically the toilet that has been introduced, storage area, a niche was created for storage area, and this entire closet where you can store your things. And then there was this resting area with a study area. Now the same module has been repeated in the double sharing and the one where we have 6 sharing bedrooms. So if you see, I have provided halfway privacy. So what happens is, the point of privacy is taken in control, because you have your privacy when you're sitting and inside the room, as well as when you're walking around the room, you're together. So it's like You have your own privacy within a common area. And balconies were provided towards that point, because that again becomes another private zone completely, as well as a social area inside the room. Now, when we go ahead, this is a basic enlarged section that I'm showing. So it's courtyard, then you have balcony, then you have rooms, then you have corridor, recreational area, and semi courtyard. So basically, the idea of transition of spaces and the balance between spaces has been achieved, has been shown in this. So yeah, this is what it is. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Ma'am. Yeah. Ma'am, we can't hear you. It's on mute.
Thank you, Isha, for your wonderful presentation, particularly taking us through your research journey. Right. So now may I invite Riddhi to make her presentation?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. I'll just share the screen. Okay, so is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So first of all, I would like to thank Smita ma'am for such a lovely introduction. And so today, I would like to present my thesis topic, that is urban intervention in the Dhobighat community, Kolaba, Mumbai, for the talk 4 of PICA Thesis Forum 2020. Before going ahead, I would like to thank Smita ma'am for helping me throughout this journey to help me to reach to my highest potential, and also PICA Thesis Forum for giving me this opportunity. Thanks a lot. Moving ahead, I have divided my presentation into 3 parts. That is, first one is thought, which leads to process, and process, which leads to outcome. And at the end, we tend to relate outcome to the initial thought. To begin with thought, some of the questions that come to our mind before selecting a topic is that, should I take a societal based, self-interest based, political, environmental based, or technological based subject? But before selecting on any topic, you need to know whether a design intervention is required for the same or no. If yes, then you're very much good to go. You need to understand the problems of the subject. You need to know if there are any problems, and if there aren't any problems, and you need to see that are there any developments required as per the current situation. Then how do we go about with the observations and inferences with respect to site? So these are some of the questions that come to our mind. So in my case, I selected societal issues of the service sector related to the community of Dhobighat Kolaba. Now, the reason why I had taken societal issues, the main factor that they have marked their own existence in globally in the Indian context. Then the challenges and the success factor were the 2 important things that were which were required for my detailed research. Going further, to understand any subject, so especially in my case, to understand any subject, it was necessary for me to understand the community, the Dhobighat community, to know its origin, its past, the factors that affect their lifestyle, their occupation, either positive or negative way, their source of income, how do they generate, is there any alternative generation program? So these were some of the things that you need to understand for going further for your detailed research and selection of your topic. Now, going ahead, I had an interview with few of the dhobis of the community. So some of the questions I had asked them, from which there were some difficult themes that came out, were they wanted to retain their occupation with the new technology, for going them hand in hand with the current age. They wanted hygienic conditions. Now, in my further presentation, you will get to see that in spite of their strenuous efforts, working long day, they used to work in unhygienic conditions that were not at all favorable. And lastly, they were not much of a fascination for high-rise. They wanted more allocated spaces for their activities, which they used to have it day long. Now, some of the important factors that we need to keep in mind before having our detailed research are the aim, objective, justification, scope, methodology. Now, to begin with, the aim of my subject was to restructure and reorganize the Dhobighat community of Kulaba Kaf Parade to have a relationship between the live and work typology. That was the most important part of my thesis. Objective, there are many objectives, but few of them were to organize and have a balance in the live and work pattern, to see whether there is an option for having an alternate income generation program. Then comes the justification. Justification is very much important to validate your subject with respective reasons. And scope and methodology are followed with pointers like case studies. Case studies could be live, could be online case study, approach studies, mapping, sketching, observations, and some of the inferences that we get through site visit. Moving ahead with the process, that is the second part of my presentation. Now, it's always better to understand the past before understanding the present. You need to know the crux of it. So what I did was I understood how the washing practice used to take place in the past, what were the mode of transport, how they used to dry clothes. These were some of the elements that I wanted to relate it to the present. Were they same or were they somewhat different? So with this schematic figure, I would like you to understand how the process used to carry out in the past by the dhobis. They used to wake up in the morning, first of all, used to perform their chores, then go to every house to collect clothes, used to arrange them in bundles, which you call it as potli. The whole family used to be involved in this particular occupation. Then the transportation of these clothes used to happen via animals. At that time, there was less use of transport like the animals. Then they used to dip those clothes in that water, either using some earthy materials, and then used to dry those clothes over the guards. So this was a basic idea of how the Indian process of laundry used to work in the past. They're somewhat related that you will be getting to see in my further presentation. Now, to have a better understanding of Dhobi community, what I had done was to study those Dhobigats in the colonial states of India, to understand their problems, to understand how they led their lives. So one was in New Delhi, another one was in Kolkata. There were two in Mumbai. They still are. One is in Mahalakshmi and one is in Kolaba, and the last one was in Chennai. So to have a better detailed understanding, I had a comparative analysis of all the four Dhobigats. So talking about their site setting, where are they situated? How does it impact the site context? Then how many number of dhobis used to work day long? Then what were the equipments? Were they earthy materials? Did they use any technology? What were the clients? Did they have clients from hotels, railways, chota clients, bada clients as they refer to? Then what were the washing materials? Now, was the whole family involved in the business? Were the men, women, and their children, all of them involved in the business? Do they want their children to carry forward their this particular occupation? Were some of the questions that I could get through this observation. Further going ahead with the time of work, the activity areas where they had separate area for washing, did they have any separate area for drying clothes, settlements, then number of clothes washed per day, dwelling areas, were they sufficient enough for their whole family to stay in? Was the site quite cramped or it was quite properly designed and placed? Are there any social problems, economic problems? Did they have any alternative income generation scheme? Was some of the observations, and for me to have a better understanding as to how I can work on further with my design program. So this helped me out with that. So to conclude it, we still see that there is this existing occupation of washing carried out manually, whereas some people use technology who are able to afford it, or some people take that thing on rent. Now, particular study, literature study of the Dhobi states that there is a changing pattern in their occupation. I would like to elaborate that. So in the past, they used to dry clothes in open or over the river banks or the ghats. They used to use earthy materials. They used to transport clothes from one place to another using animals. So these are some of the points. Then also, as mentioned earlier, the living units are quite cramped for the whole family to stay in. So these are some of the conclusions that I could get from the above observation. Going further, to have a detailed idea of two of the Dhobi Ghats in Mumbai. So one is the Mahalakshmi Dhobi Ghat and another one is in Kolaba. So in the next slide, you will get to see the images that will help you in a better understanding of what this Dhobi Ghat is, or a laundromat. So in the first image, you will see there are these concrete washing pans. The clothes are dried either on the rooftops or if there is any separate ground available for them. There are these clothes bundled into potlies after sorting and tagging. Again, one of the process of their occupation. The clothes are dyed either in lye or some of the solutions which are required. They don't make much use of acid, but if required, then there are these ironing yards. If they are in a position to afford this ironing facility, then or else they give it in the outskirt area. There are these automated machines for drying as well. Now we go ahead with Mahalakshmi Dhobi Ghat in Mumbai to have a better understanding of this particular laundromat. Talking about Mahalakshmi Dhobi Ghat, it's the world's biggest laundromat, which is spread across 4 acres of land, which has 7,500 of migrant laborers, and they normally it's calculated as per the statistics that 7,50,000 garments are washed per day. So this particular is the land use map of Mahalakshmi Dhobi Ghat. In blue, you will get to see the settlements that are surrounding the washing area, the activity area. So the area is so cramped because of the growing demand and also the growing population of the families themselves. Then in the next land use map, you will get to see in white, there are these settlements. There are these public toilet blocks. Of course, yes, because of the cramped atmosphere, they do not have toilet blocks within their settlement. There is one community space that acts as a point of interaction. And one of the important part of Mahalakshmi Dhobi Ghat, which I would say it used to be, was the tourist route from which they used to earn an alternative income. So through tourists, they used to make them understand the history of Dhobi Ghat as to how it used to work back then and how it's being, still carried out ahead and also in the present. Then from that particular tourist route, they used to get money and which would help them in their family income program. Then comes the prototype of the live and work space in Mahalakshmi Dhobi Ghat. As I explained in my earlier slide, this used to be the settlement. In between, there used to be the work area. So a prototype that would help you explain how this area used to work is the settlement. There is it is the closed space where they do the activity of living. There is an activity arcade where the automated machines are placed. There are these bylanes which act as a one-way road for transporting clothes from one. So it acts as a pedestrian access, it acts as a vehicular access. So there are no separate ways for commuting. And then comes a workspace. So now workspace is divided into two parts where we call it as washing and drying. So washing happens on the flogging stones, and the drying is done on a separate drying ground, which was present in Mahalakshmi Dhobi Ghat, but which is now acquired by the Omkar Real Estate Developers as a part of the SRA scheme. This particular slide helps us to understand the hierarchy of the dhobis. So to begin with, there is a stone owner or a dhobi himself, who is the main, who is the head of the community, who conducts the meeting, who has an overall impact on the whole of the community. Coming down comes the manager, who monitors all the work of activities like sorting, tagging, transporting clothes from one place to another. Lastly comes the dhobi, who works for the stone owner. So to give you an idea, the dhobi doesn't, all the dhobis don't own the stone for washing clothes. They either take it on rent or they have their own stone for washing clothes. So they perform the activity of washing, ironing, drying, and so on. Going further with my particular study of Dhobi Ghat at Kolaba, that was my thesis topic. And to begin in detail with the particular study, I would like you to have a look at my site visit. So, to understand how the existing condition of the site was before having an intervention. So, as soon as in the first image, you will see that as soon as you enter the site, you get to see a sanitation block, which is again a point of a negative point of the site, I would say, because it gives you a bad odor as a visitor, and also for commuters, it is not that good enough. There are these informal settlements lined up adjoining the bylanes. There are these washing pans, concrete washing pans. In this, there were no separate parking yards given. Unlike the two-wheeler parking yard, that was the only space given for parking of the bicycles, whereas others were stacked upon the bylanes. There's an open drainage line going throughout the site through the bylanes. Then there was a single access route, a one-way route as a pedestrian access, vehicular access, and also for parking. As I mentioned earlier, one of the process before washing was the sorting and tagging. So they normally bundle those clothes in potlies and also before the delivery. Next comes in the semi-open space, we get to see the machines, automated machines. It's possible only if people can afford to, and if not, then they get this on rent. Then there are these tanks, or this concrete tanks where they used to store in water, and also the pans where they wash the clothes again, the flogging stone, if they are not affording these heavy machineries, automated machineries. There was a separate yard given for sorting and tagging for this particular activity. Also, you'll get to see the bamboo rods connected to the ropes on which they dry clothes, either on the rooftops or on the open grounds or spaces if available. The following flow chart will help us to understand who were the clients, from where did they get their clothes, who were the like, were they in the proximity or no, so that we'll get to understand. So they refer to it as Bada Kam and Chota Kam. So Bada Kam were the clients, they getting clothes from hotels, airports, garment factories, BMCs, BMC hospitals, railways. Chota Kam were the restaurants, offices, residential buildings, private firms. They normally, unlike Mahalakshmi Dhobikar, they didn't collect clothes from the hospitals because of the health constraints that they had, because there is no as such age factor involved in this community. Age, starting from 10, 15 years of age to 65, people are still in that occupation. So that comes as one of the constraints. Now, division of spaces according to the functions. Now, looking at the site much more in detail, this is the existing site condition where at the core of the site, there is this washing area, which is surrounded with the settlements of the occupants, and rest all are the settlements of the non-occupants. So to have a prototype or a study between the live and work of the Dhobi, there is a small figure that I have shown. So in red, you get to see the stay area, which there the activity of living is performed. Then on the ground level, you get to see the work area where there are automated machines placed. In the bylanes, there is this activity of drying, or maybe it is used for transportation of clothes, and also the washing area where the activity of washing is done manually. Now, to give you a more detailed idea as to what is the sequence of the process of washing. So first comes washing, then comes drying, and lastly there is ironing or folding. So in washing, there are two types, that is manual washing, mechanized washing, drying, sun drying or machine drying, and ironing or folding is either done in their is done within the site, or if not able to, then they send it to the outskirts. Now, to have a detailed understanding of these processes, I have shown some illustrations which would help you to understand how these processes are carried out. So in figure, in the image A, you will get to see there is a different space given for sorting and tagging of activity after the clothes are taken from the client and transported to the site. The sorting and tagging is done as per the color, as per the requirement of washing, or only of washing and ironing. So that is how the segregation of clothes is done on site. Then in sketch B and C, or I would say in image BC, you will get to see that they are separated and tagged accordingly as per the requirement. In Sketch D, these tagged clothes are tied together in a form of a potli, and then done the further process of dipping of clothes in soapy water. So in second process, you'll get to see that after the clothes are sorted and tagged, they are dipped into the solution. Then they are rubbed off with a brush and some other equipments as well. The process 4 explains that after the process 3 of rubbing of dirt, they are bashed against the flogging stones. In process 5 and 6, they are dried either on the rooftops or in the open yards as per the availability, and then the ironing takes place. In process 7, these washed and dried clothes are bundled in the form of potlis and transported either via hand carts or tempos or scooters. And to just give you a rain check of all the following processes, process 1 is of the sorting and tagging. Process 2, dipping of clothes in soapy water. Rubbing of dirt is the process 3, bashing against the stone. Then clothes being dried and washed and dried and transported to the required client. Now, after having a detailed observation of the site, it was of course necessary for me to have a survey study analysis to have a better understanding of what is the community's requirement. So for that, I had a survey study of around 30 people with an objective to understand the demographics of the site as well. So to give an overall idea of what these pie chart explain us. So in first, you will get to see the hierarchy as I explained earlier. There is an owner and a worker. So owner owns the stone and the worker works for that owner if as per his position in his family or his earning capacity. Second comes the gender. It's a male dominated community, so more of men and less of female. So another point was to have, of course, they help them in ironing of clothes where the area is within their settlements. Another thing that we come to a point where there should be some employment generation program for women as well. Now talking about the clients, as very well explained earlier, so their clients came from hospitals, railways, hotel, residents, restaurants, and quite a few other things as well. Then comes the transportation. The transportation used to happen via van, bike, bicycle, handcart, and either on foot. Sanitation was the biggest point of concern of my design intervention, since the reason why they had much of public toilets and less of the sanitation, personal sanitation, private sanitation block inside their settlement was because of the site condition, the cramped environment, the way the settlements were built because of the growing population. So yes, going further, there was one question that was asked to them. One of the questions that were asked to them was, do they need their workspace in accordance with their living residence? So quite an optimistic answer about that was yes, of course, since the activities are quite interrelated with each other. Talking about the settlements, maybe if the community wants their women, one of the women members to work not in the common public area, whereas to work inside the settlement. So that kind of a proximity was quite necessary in terms of living and working spaces. So is there any need for recreational space? Now that question was asked because of the one of the observation that I made was there were no proper, I won't say proper, but there were no recreational space available for the children of that community, because again, as I mentioned earlier, because of the cramped site and the growing number of settlements, without giving it a thought as to will there be any space for their children to play. So out of this survey, the conclusion that was made, of course, there is a need of intervention, a design intervention in this particular community, and I would say this particular site of Colaba. Of course, there at present, even without the intervention, their life is not at halt. But at the same time, in near future, with the coming challenges and the climatic changes, there is a need of an intervention for sure. With the help of this above understanding of the process, it made me understand how to make a design brief with the help of this design objective. So for sure, my design objective was to have a relationship between the live and work space, and also to have an alternative income generation program which will help in the benefit, which will serve as a benefit of the community. So one of the thought that was given in a alternative income generation program was to use that wastewater, which we call it as a grey water from the machine, and use it in the form of an urban farming for growing crops, and they could sell it out in their neighboring vicinity, as there was a market in adjacent to the site. Following is my design brief. Of course, that was subject to changes as per my design requirement and design development. Talking about the output. So after thought process comes the output. So this was the for getting into the site and what are its constraints and what intervention is required. Of course, the site context is very well an important part of understanding any particular site. How the intervention is going to impact the contextual part of the site. So so understanding the built structures, unbuilt structures, what are the are there any open spaces, are there any commercial buildings, residential blocks, and so on. In detail is the view of the site, which I've already explained earlier. In core is the workspace, surrounding are the settlements of the occupants and the settlements of the non-occupants as well. Now, further, I went ahead with the massing of the site. Now, massing of the site was based on three important design objectives. That was one, there was lack of proper workspace given to the site and also for the occupation. So I further divided the workspace as a washing part and a drying part. And the last one is the live space. So if you'll see on the slide, you'll get to see there is a relationship between the live and work typology. So in red, you will get to see these machine towers, which are connected to the drying tower, and surrounding are the settlements of the occupants. This conclusion was derived from the concept models in accordance with the idea of three different zones that I want to interrelate with. So because of this, I could come to this particular massing. Going further in detail of the site explanation, these are the three machine towers. There is these three machine towers are connected to the drying tower via bridge that will be explained in the further presentation. And in yellow, you could see the settlements of the occupants. Now, there are two different routes marked onto the site. So in black, you will see the loaders and unloaders route. So that particular route was made in order to not disturb the community who, which is spread across the site. And so there was a pattern that was followed around the machine tower and the drying tower. So that helped in easy commutation of their services. Then came the visitors route. Now visitors route, now to begin with the visitors route, yes, it was a plan to have an alternative income generation program. So on the ground level, there were washing pans explaining the history of the Dhobi community, and also there were some sculptures. So this was kind of a having revenue generated from getting to know the history of the Dhobi community. Going further, explaining about the activities inside the spaces. So these are the housing modules. Housing modules, there the activity of living used to be performed, and the housing modules were placed in such a way that there were these common verandas for interaction. A sort of community interaction was very important to have a good bond for as one of the point of growing their community and having it marked in the Indian economy as well. Then activities in the drying tower, of course, yes, as mentioned, it used there used to be things performed like bundling them into potlies and all of that. Activities in the machine tower of washing them in washing machine, sorting and tagging. So to go further, this is a detailed view of the machine tower, the ground floor plan of the machine tower, where the basic activity, the first process, that of sorting and tagging, used to take place on the ground level, where these carts and tempos, the loaders and the unloaders used to travel around these machine towers by not disturbing the surrounding community, the Dhobi community. Then there used to be separate place for bundling them in potlies as well, and the service area was used to use and take to go to the first floor. Then the activities like washing, drying, cleaning, and dry cleaning, then soaking, folding used to happen on the first floor of this space. Now, after having a strenuous day and after working for long hours, it's required to have a breakout space for them to relax. So that provision was given in as one of the design intervention. Second floor of is having the same activity as that of the first, with the machine towers and with the machineries of washing and also for drying, ironing, and soaking. Then this particular slide helps us to understand the facade of the machine tower, where there was a lot of openness, making less use of electricity. So these windows were a sort of sliding windows where they could adjust the windows as per their requirement. So there was a lot of openness in the machine tower in spite of going higher in terms of structural element. Then comes a drying tower. As explained, it is connected to all the three machine towers in the form of connected to all the three machine towers via bridge. Now, having a detailed plan study of the drying tower on the ground floor, as I explained earlier, it was used as a tourist route and also part of an alternative income generation scheme. There were these open recreational spaces for the children to play and having a sense of belongingness to play within the site and not going somewhere else to play. Then going further is the ground floor plan of the drying area was a double height space. Going to the second level where the activity of drying of clothes used to was performed by the community. The third floor plan of the drying area was connected to the machine towers, where I also mentioned earlier that they wanted to have an interrelation between all the processes of washing and drying and ironing. Again, it is followed by the fourth floor plan of the drying area. Now, these many levels of drying were required because of the number of clothes they used to wash per day. Use of the drying tower, with the help of this, you will get to see that there was an element that was used as a structural member of my design of my architectural design intervention were these poles. These were the steel structural box sections that were like an aesthetical element which used to represent the bamboos that they used to use for drying clothes. These are some of the sections that you will get to see the interrelation between the drying tower, machine tower, then their housing and also the parking that was given here. Now comes the third part of my zoning. So first part being the washing, that is the machine tower. Second part being the drying, that is the drying tower. And third part is the housing module. Now, housing modules, I had made 5 types of modules where some of them were G structures and some of them were G+1 structure. One of the constraints that we saw in site were there were only public toilets and less of private toilets. So that part of observation was then done in the form of design intervention in the housing module, where the toilet blocks were included inside the settlements. So to give you a proper brief understanding of all the 3 processes, so as I mentioned, the outcome was from the thought that to understand the past, which helped me to understand the present of the site. So in the process came the study of the site context, helping me with the zoning and massing of the site, which led to the 3 main interventions that I had thought upon through this process. Was my output, that was the machine tower, drying tower, and the housing modules. These are some of the structural details that were important in terms of designing the machine tower. So one of the details that I would like to highlight is the cellular beam detail that you would see. This was done in the machine tower because of the heavy machineries used. So this cellular beam helped me to hide these pipes, the cervical part through these slabs, and which was then covered with a suspended ceiling. Yes, so this is my representation of the of this whole design process. So these are the machine towers and the drying tower as well, and these are the housing modules. So thank you so much for patiently listening to my presentation. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Riddhi, for yet another brilliant presentation, taking us through the journey of your thesis. We have a number of participants here, and I invite them to either unmute their mic and ask the question, or type the question in the chat. And while they do that, let me kind of set the ball rolling a little bit, and maybe begin with asking a couple of questions myself. And one thing, looking at both your presentations and also, of course, kind of knowing your research journey more closely as your guide. I want to know. So both of you have used extensively hand-drawn sketches and analysis drawings in your 9 semester research, the DD1 part, as we call. So can you tell us a little bit about how you put together your black book, incorporating the hand-drawn sketches, and importance of the hand-drawn sketches that you have? Particularly, Isha, I think you have relied quite extensively on them for both your research as well as your design. And Riddhi, you also have done those little watercolors to express your research. So can you tell us a little about the process of making of your black book and incorporating these things?
Um, yeah, so making of the black book, if we start with that, and the main idea was to show the journey of what I have gone through in the book. So for that, I am not that great at expressing myself with words. So that is when my my drawings or my sketches come in. So it's like when you draw something, or when you have your understanding of few things and you start putting it in with your hand on the paper, you start understanding what kind of elements that you need to design further. So it's like it gives you a start. So for me, it was basically to understand my research and then putting it in form of graphics on the sheet. And for that, I designed my own thing on how I can do that. So the main thing I think is to make your own style and understand your own design through your perspective, because that is how we can make others understand what we are trying to do. So the process of the book is basically me talking to you, getting your guidance, understanding on how I should go ahead, and uh, doing my research on specific topics, and making a storyline basically. So whenever you present, you have and start and end to a story. So with a climax in between, that is how my book also has been designed, where I have been talking about the steps that I've taken, and then there is this one big summary of what I want, and after what I've learned, and then the end is where my thesis ka topic gets justification. Yeah.
Right. Riddhi, would you like to say
Yes,
something?
ma'am. For me, before starting with the black book, always we have this mindset of referring to the other black books, which are kind of related to our subject and our issues that we are normally looking forward to. So that helped me to structure those references, helped me to structure my own black book, which then were followed with the thought, of course, then the process that I already mentioned in my book. These were all the part of chapterization of my whole black book. So that followed that the methodology of doing some case studies, and what questions should I ask. So this helped me to frame the chapters of my book. So that was one part. that I would like to say, which made very easy for me in referring to those books which are available in our library. And talking about the hand-in sketching, for me in my thesis, it was for me to kind of have a break from from the images that we have. So I kind of illustrated those images in my understanding, in order to explain someone else what I think about those images. So that was my imagery of the visual idea of the whole of the site. So yeah.
Right. Thanks.
Hmm.
Uh, do we have any question? Does anyone want to unmute their mic and ask a question?
Uh, yeah, I'll go till this still other people start. So I feel in both your community-oriented thesis study, it's the economics plays a larger role in the current situation, the way it is for India, the way both these communities, their situations, you in your thesis you portrayed it, how they are and
Hmm.
why do they need changes, and how you can do provide interventions and uplift their lives and through the architecture. So the current situation, obviously, I think the economic condition of our country and various things, they play important role. So once that is changed, how this the interventions and all, will it hold in place, right, or will it still be very viable? You understand?
Yeah, ma'am. With the current condition, if I say, these interventions basically now, if you see a lot of spaces around public spaces, basically are like, even if colleges you take or few residential projects that are halfway through, are providing their spaces for COVID patients and everything like that. So this definitely helps that way, and economically, um, I I think that during such a scenario, most of them are uh, uh, are going back to their own spaces and everything. So I don't know how effectively it will work in this situation right now, but definitely this space can act as the working women's hostel can act as a space where COVID patients have been kept, because a lot of infrastructure that is there available today, which is not being used, is being converted into spaces for COVID patients. So that is one way you can use it in the current in the current social and situation.
No, I didn't mean that in COVID situation.
Okay.
My question was more about that as soon as, like you portrayed uh, the difficult situation of current working women hostel, and then you showed the image where how they should be,
Hmm.
eh, right next to each, juxtaposed next to each other. So
Hmm.
this difference, isn't it largely because of the economics that goes behind it?
Okay, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then as soon as you change that, will it really work for the economics part of the users?
Yes, ma'am. So for this, what I had done was all my design ideas and all the design details that had been put in were extremely economically beneficial. So and even the part where just the hostel wasn't provided, few portions, few infrastructure on the site was provided that will maintain the economic balance for the maintenance of the hostel. This was done with considering your point ki how this will economically help my the change that I want to bring needs a lot of economical support. So how to provide that, and for that the extra infrastructure of WeWork and daycare center and the public plaza was given. Yeah, sorry
Right,
for
yeah.
misinterpreting your
No
question.
problem. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so I would like to say about in my case, the income, if they are quite economically stable, and if they would, so your question was like, if they're economically stable, so will my design intervention be quite applicable to the same condition? Am I
Yeah, I mean, will it be very expensive? Will the per piece, the, that that how much we pay for
Hmm.
laundry, will it increase too much if you provide the infrastructure of that quality? Will the economics, after the intervention, will it change drastically?
For sure it will change, because as we have this mindset that the more we grow in terms of lifestyle, the more we get advanced, the cost factor is affected quite seriously. So it will also boost up the economic factor of the country. At the same time, it will benefit the community as well. So there is a good share which they are not able to give at present to the Indian economy. They will be in a better position to give if these interventions are implicated in their particular situation.
Right. Yeah.
There is also that the business upgradation is because currently the dhobis, they are in a kind of a stagnant economic situation. In order to kind of improve that, they would require business upgradation. Otherwise, the younger generation would not want to carry forward
Yeah.
the same profession. So here the question is how you can upgrade your system of doing the business. And I think you are right what you pointed out, that in that process the cost of the services will definitely increase for the clients and customers, but I think they should be willing to pay.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
That is how I see it. I don't know how Riddhi but
Uh,
I think that was the basic point, that without business upgradation, people will not be able to upgrade their living
Correct.
quarters and all that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And as architects, it is definitely our duty towards the professions, towards the society, to make
Hmm.
sure that we uplift lives of, the society, the users, everyone.
Yes, ma'am.
So we definitely, through our thesis in academia, we provide solutions for their, changes for betterment for the society.
Right.
Yeah.
And those again, those solutions kind of have to again thought about in terms of design program and architectural intervention, because you cannot as architects you cannot really intervene in like say better education or other things, but one can definitely kind of give give a way towards a kind of a design program that will indirectly
Help.
felicitate these kind of things. So I think design program formulation is very important after doing the research.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
The research was absolutely fabulous in both these cases. The in depth, thorough, the research where you really cited all the users, how their lives are, what are their activities in detail, and so that was, I really appreciate that. Thank you
Thank you.
for showing it to us. Yeah, and I'm sure all the students also benefited.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
So, any more
Uh,
questions? Yeah.
Kavita, can I just come in? Jinu?
Sure, yeah. Go ahead, Jenu. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, hi. So this is actually, linked with, to both Riddhi and Isha's topics. Both their projects have, if you look at, not the Dhobi Hut context, but if you look at laundry as a service, and if you also look at working women's hostels, and both of them are going through from a business perspective, there is a sort of a life cycle upgradation that's happening. Laundry services are getting increasingly organized. There are a lot of private players. In fact, there are venture capitalists investing in laundry businesses. So that's one aspect. And so also with hostels, what was hostels is now, there are new terminologies. Hostels are now called student housing and co-living spaces. So there is sort of a business upgradation. There's a upgradation in the outlook and in the service and in the product at all levels. So this is connected to what you were saying
Yes.
about how it impacts the commercial side of it. Yeah, so I just thought I'll make that point. I think specific to Isha's project, the the student housing, co-living, which are new terminologies for hostels. I mean, different forms of hostels. Is seeing a lot of action in the last year or so. So I think maybe a good idea for you to go and connect with some of these startups and companies and see if you can translate some of these into some actual work.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did try to connect with the working women, with the Women and Children Organization of India, but then there's no reply from that. But your idea of connecting to the private sector makes more sense.
Yeah,
Really
the
try.
private sector is seeing immense movement. I mean,
Yeah.
the amount of investment that is happening in this sector. I mean, and just I think last month the government has announced a policy for rental housing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and which I think it's got something to do with a lot of the crises that have that have come to the forefront because of COVID. But rental housing is a policy that the government is really pushing, and in the rental housing, the larger umbrella of rental housing, student housing, and co-living is an important. There's an important mention of both these areas, which will then attract a lot of private players.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
I can see a lot of action on this front going forward.
Yes, I'll definitely get to it.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think the some students in the current the passing out batch, I think, are uh, are doing thesis related to that. Is that right?
Yeah, in fact,
Yeah,
one of them, Yash Bhagat, I don't know if he's there today here, but
right.
he's also doing a student housing project.
Yeah.
He did a student
So
housing project
right.
located in Pune.
So we have a comment and question from Gagandeep. Gagandeep, would you like to unmute and ask it yourself?
Yeah, sure. I would ask. The question is for Isha. The question was: there are cited evidences that WeWork reduces productivity and efficiency in the working environment, and also it leads to businesses to lose a lot of money. And also, WeWork has filed for bankruptcy as well.
Hmm.
So I would want to understand basically what was the idea
Yeah.
behind selecting the concept as a working environment, because it is failing in some ways.
Okay, so while I was doing my thesis, the main question that was raised by a lot of females that I was interviewing, and as well as ma'am, was that a lot of women who come for work, there are women who are entrepreneurs as well, and these women basically need a space for themselves to set up their own office, and have a space where they can call people who are employed for them, or else work from their own spaces. So rather than giving a space inside the hostel, I thought of incorporating a commercial space that acts as that acts as a co-working space, as well as women who are there in the hostel who are practicing such profession, where there are women who even take tuitions, there are women who even teach others. So all of these spaces can come to so all of these women can come to one space. So at that time, WeWork was something that was that was in the news, and something that was providing revenue as well. So that is the reason that kind of a concept was used in the area at that moment. But now that you say that the thing is going for filing for bankruptcy, it's still, for that matter, if the working women are saying that this space can still get converted into a workspace and not a WeWork. So it is subjective to change, and it can change because it has been designed in a way where it is completely out of the entity and can be reused as any other space. So it becomes a multi-purpose space at that moment. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's also, I think, a way in which you create an ecosystem.
Exactly.
You work, live, play,
Mm-hmm.
and you also access leisure, all sort of in within, let's say, a larger, complex. So with Gagandeep's point, about WeWork filing for bankruptcy, see, that may be an isolated case. I mean, the co-working business as such is still a business that has potential, but it's more about a specific company. There are tech companies which have gone bankrupt. That doesn't mean that technology or IT is not, it doesn't have a future, right? So it's more specific to the way that company was governed and the valuations that were associated with it. But I think also about the point that co-working reduces productivity and stuff like that is still. I mean, I know what you're talking about, that particular research, but it's still fairly open, and there are a lot of researchers pointing out in the other direction as well. In fact, now after COVID, a lot of people are wondering what to do with fixed assets.
Yes.
So there is a, it can go either way. We don't know.
That is correct. Does anyone else has a comment or a question? So Riddhi, till somebody else kind of does that, I want to ask you one thing, and this is related to this. So this in situ redevelopment of these informal live and work pockets in our city, and few students who take up such topics, and of course. This is part of this is not part of sometimes the official policy. So here the students. So Athira made a presentation 2 weeks back, and you have made a presentation. And earlier we had Dhania's thesis, who also looked at an informal live and work settlement. And all three of you have proposed these kind of a policy of in situ redevelopment, which is also community initiated rather than a commercial developer initiated thing. So it is more of a kind of a policy recommendation as well. So in that, and I had this question for Athira also indirectly, and I'm asking you a little more directly, is that have you dealt with the question of density when it comes to the housing scenario? Because it's okay, it's nice as a student to be very idealistic and to try to give the best possible living solution for people, but how do you deal with the density, the existing density first of all, and secondly the as the business will upgrade, more migrants will join, and as it happens even today, in Dhobi Ghats, where people from villages come to join their community people there, to find some work, right? And they have to live somewhere, so more people will join. So I feel that that is where uh, the, the housing situation, to be more realistic, we have to kind of perhaps explore also how to deal with the density situation without making it the SRA absolutely uh, a living hell kind of a situation. How do you deal with that, and did you deal with it?
Yeah, so earlier I was of the opinion that to preserve any culture of that particular community, you of course need to understand how that community stays in with respect to its occupation pattern as well. So I was of the mindset that going, ground structure or G+1 or maximum to G+2, it will retain that kind of interaction within the community with each other, like having the veranda system all together, having the vision touch onto the ground, like not going higher and having a connection with their working